Hello and welcome to our virtual wisdom circle, the heart behind the daily hustle of champions, powered by Exceptional Connections. I'm Cindy O'Neill Dady, the founder and chief connector of Exceptional Connections, a community that I have had the privilege of leading since 2009. Once each month, we set aside our regular conversation to connect format to bring you something a little different. Through the heart behind the daily hustle of champions, we shine a spotlight on one of our champion connectors, exploring the heart, habits, purpose, and experiences that shape both their personal and professional lives. Let's see here. Yes. This month, I'm delighted to welcome Kathy Riemann joining us from Tulalip, Washington. Kathy, we're so glad you're here.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Our complimentary virtual conversation, excuse me, our complimentary virtual wisdom circle is open to everyone and was created to elevate the visibility of our champion connectors while sharing authentic conversations filled with practical wisdom, life lessons, and meaningful insights you can immediately apply in your own life and your business. At Exceptional Connections, we believe success isn't defined solely by what we accomplish, it's shaped by who we become along the journey. When we're willing to honestly share our stories, challenges, lessons, and victories, we create a community where people feel seen, heard, valued, and witnessed, and where meaningful relationships naturally flourish. We'll spend about the first 30 to 45 minutes getting to know Kathy before opening the conversation to your questions. So as you listen, I invite you to jot down any questions, any thoughts that you'd like to ask or contribute to the conversation during our Q&A. So Kathy, again, welcome. Hey, before we explore the heart and the secret sauces behind your success, I'd love to begin at the beginning. So,
Mm.
would you share a little bit about your background and the journey that led you to where you are today, especially for those in our Exceptional Connections community who haven't yet had the pleasure of getting to know you?
Sure. The journey, like you said, it really is surprising sometimes. I think I never intended to start a skincare brand. It was never on my radar. It just happened organically, really. I've always been very interested in my own health and longevity, but it never really reached my skin. That was always something that I ignored because, for me, health was my physical fitness and my nutrition and my sleep and things like that. And I never even thought about it, having anything to do with my skin. And our skin is our largest organ, and it is a reflection of what's happening internal, but it's also a doorway into that internal world. And it wasn't until I was in my 50s that I finally understood that. Uh, so when I was younger, when the I began to be interested in my physical health, really, I guess I should start at the beginning. I'm the youngest of five. I was born in Kalamazoo, Michigan, the daughter of a truck driver and a stay-at-home mom. We were a typical blue collar Midwest family, and I was the baby, the princess, the peanut. I was loved and adored by everybody. I was the mascot. And I grew up just being lifted up, really, which is wonderful. But I found it interesting that people tended to underestimate me because I was so small, And at first I was like, what do you mean you don't think I can do that? Why are you surprised that I can do that? And it didn't strike me until later. I'm like, oh, it's because I'm little. They have these expectations of what I can and can't do. And then it became like, oh, this is kind of a superpower in a way because I can totally surprise people. Like, oh, wow, you can do that. So that was kind of fun being in that position to be really quiet because I am quiet and unassuming. And so then I catch people off guard. Um, so when I was 6 years old, my dad died of cancer. He was 38, and that left my mother having to figure out what to do because it was the diagnosis came, it was unexpected, and he died 6 months later. So it was quick. Um, Oldest brother that was still at home, and my sister, so he was 14, really kind of had to help raise me. So they would pick me up, they would take turns picking me up after school. One day I'm spending it with my 14-year-old brother, and I became the mascot of the wrestling team. And I would be hanging out with him and his teenage boy friends. And this is where my love of fast cars and motorcycles came from because I spent a lot of time in, and I would be the spotter. It was my job to look for deer and cops. So that fast cars and loud motorcycles stems from. His friends, they never saw me as a drag. Oh, we got the tag along today. They embraced it, and I loved the attention. And then with my sister, the same thing. She would pick me up, and then I would be having to sit through band rehearsals or whatever it was with her and her friends, and the same thing. So teachers got to know me. Of course, they knew our whole family, being a big family. They knew who I was, but I just became just kind of a fixture there at the high school because they were having to take care of me. Um, so that really kind of shaped. I got so much attention because when a parent dies, they want to make sure the little one gets what they need. And it strikes me now, it's like, God, who's taking care of them, of me, but who is taking care of them? They spent all this time and energy on me to make sure that I always felt taken care of, that I felt loved, that I felt supported. Yeah, so throughout my whole young life, I had that love and support. When I was probably 11 years old, my whole family had been involved in music, and my mom said, "Well, I think you should play the." And I'm thinking, oh, she means the bassoon. I thought she meant the bassoon. So here I am, this teeny tiny little thing, super excited that I'm going to get to play the biggest instrument in the band, being teeny tiny with the big red instrument. So my brother brought one home from school. The band director said, okay, because they knew the family. And he brought home this teeny tiny little case. And I went, that's not an oboe. I said, yes, it is. I said, no, it's too small. I said, well, it comes apart in three pieces. You put it together, and that's an oboe. So I opened up the case and I went, no, it's not red. This is an oboe. He said, oh, you're thinking of the bassoon. So I was so disappointed. And my mother said, just try it. Just try it. You don't know. You might really, really like it. Turns out I was a natural. I had a natural talent for it. It's an instrument that's really hard to learn, and it's not one that they typically start young kids on, especially as young as I was. I was still in elementary school. And a few months later, the band director from the junior high had me come up and play for him and the high school band director because they wanted to make sure that it really was a good fit for me. And he went, huh, surprised. They were surprised. Uh, and they said, well, how about you come up to the junior high and start playing with the junior high band. I'm like, but I'm in elementary school. Can I do that? It's like, oh yeah, we'll clear it with your teacher. So I started leaving the elementary school every day for a certain amount of time so I could play in the junior high band. So I've always felt special in a way. You know, people went out of their way to take care of me. And the same thing when I was in junior high, then I would go over to the high school and play in the high school band. Um, yeah, I was a natural fit for it. And that's when I learned that, or when I discovered music is my key. That's my thing. That's what I want to do. That's what I'm going to focus on. I knew that if I wanted to go to college, I would have to get a scholarship, coming from a small family, or not a small family, but a blue collar family. A scholarship would be essential. And I would get all these brochures from the conservatories because I really wanted to go to Juilliard, or I wanted to go to Cincinnati, or I ended up going to Cincinnati, but Cleveland Institute of Music. And I looked at the price tag and went, well, that's not possible. So I was going to focus in on the state schools, because growing up in my family, if you can't pay for it, you don't you don't get it. You don't, we don't go into debt for things that you have to be able to afford it. So I focused in on the state schools. I got a full scholarship to Michigan State. And that's when I went, huh, maybe I should have, maybe I should have tried for these other schools if I got a full scholarship. But uh, uh, it was, uh, it was my ticket in. But it was right before I went to Michigan State, and I'm at home and the phone rings and my mother answers, and she gets on. She goes, Kathy, it's Joseph Robinson, the principal oboist with the New York Philharmonic. And I went, what's he calling me for? So I picked up the phone. Hello? And he was offering me a spot at his school in Manhattan, the Manhattan School of Music. And I said, I've already committed to Dan Stolper at Michigan State. He said, oh, well, he's very lucky. So I just knew then that that's what I wanted to do. And it was through my exposure to music that really my focus on my health came into play. I mean, I grew up in a family where the dialogue was longevity doesn't run in our family. We don't have great genes. We don't live that long. Any disease you can think of, we've got it in our family. But you know, who can't say that? I mean, pretty much everyone can say that. But that's the mindset that I grew up with. But when I went off to college and working with my music professors, this is when the whole mind body connection came in, and the performance psychology, the visualization, keeping your body physically healthy because it enhances your musical performance. So I wanted to make sure I kept my body strong. So I focused in on my diet, my exercise. Then I was doing yoga and Feldenkrais method and Alexander technique. So then I learned the whole body alignment and how to use your body properly so you avoid injury. So this started at, when I was 18 years old. So I've always had that mindset of it being connected, you know, your diet, your exercise, your sleep, your mindset. It's all connected, and it's only going to enhance whatever it is you're trying to do. And for me, it was is being the best possible performer that I could be. And when you are a performer, it is kind of like it's more physical than you would think, and doing breath work and building my lung capacity. So I was totally immersed in that process of making myself a complete whole um healthy person. So it really, I took it as my job. Um, and then When I finished school, I went to Cincinnati Conservatory of Music for my grad school work. And when I finished grad school, I thought, I think I want to move out to San Francisco. And I want to work with a couple of the members of the symphony out there that I had worked with previously. And I told my family, and they, again, super supportive. And well, if you can do it, I mean, if anyone can do it, you can do it. So I moved out to San Francisco with my instruments, one suitcase, and $100 in my pocket that my brother gave me. Uh, totally, winging it, really, in a way. But I never thought that I couldn't do it because never in my life had I ever thought that there was something I couldn't do. Um, Yeah, and it worked out. It was fine. It was great. I loved it. But I met a man there, and he's an engineer, and he was doing a temporary job assignment up in Redding, California. So we did a long distance thing. Then he moved back up to Seattle, and we did the long distance thing for a bit. And we just decided, well, if we want this to go any further, um, one of us needs to make the move. And so he had his career already established. And I said, well, I can do what I do anywhere. So I moved up to Seattle and we continued expanding our relationship, learning about one another. And he, being an engineer, everything is, really black and white. It fits in a box. Uh, and he really could not fathom the uncertainty of my career choice. He couldn't understand how I would be comfortable with not knowing what my paycheck was going to be or not knowing. And he saw that as, well, you obviously don't value financial stability and security. And no matter how the conversation went, I could never convince him that, no, I totally understand it. Here I am. I'm coming here with no debt. I obviously live within my means. It was just a conversation that just never ended. So I realized, okay, you have to make a decision. You are either going to pursue your musical career without him, or you're going to change directions in your life. You're going to choose a different path. And he didn't encourage me either way. He left that up to me to decide, but I knew that it was him and building a family together and building a life together or my musical career. And I chose him. Uh, I don't regret it at all because it opened up a huge world for me. And of course, I have my two fabulous children. Uh, but it just was a different direction. And so I thought, okay, so I really have to show him, prove to him that no, I do understand finances and the significance of it and how that opens up a world of freedom and all of that. So I decided what better way than to prove that than to work in the financial industry. So I got hired by a very small mutual fund company. I studied, they paid for me to study to take the Series 6 and 63 exam so I could be licensed to sell just mutual funds with the 6 and 63 in the state of Washington. And I thought, this is crazy. I didn't really enjoy it, but hey, I thought this is the best way to show him that I'm capable. I can do this. Um, I found it very limiting being in the small mutual fund company. So then I thought, well, I'm going to go work for a bigger firm. So I got a job at Dean Witter, which then eventually became Morgan Stanley. And I was working towards getting my Series 7 so I could sell my stocks and bonds and all of it and be a broker. And I didn't really want to, but I just thought this is the path that I'm on now. And then he comes home. We just had gotten married. He said, there is an opportunity for us. We're his company had won a job in South Korea. So they were looking for people, engineers to go over while they were building the new airport at Incheon International Airport. And I said, absolutely, let's do it. This is the time to do it. We're young. We have no kids. Yes. And he, being okay, we need to think about every possible thing that could go wrong here. And I'm like, this is an incredible opportunity. How do you not do this? So it was really through me saying, no, we need to do this. He said, but we're going to be like 25 miles from the DMZ. I said, the DMZ's been there 50 years. We'll be registered with the embassy. They'll know where we are. There's been peace on the peninsula. Come on, let's do it. Uh, and I loved it. Oh my gosh, being in that environment, in that, and we lived there for 3 years, and it was just right up my alley. The whole Eastern philosophy, the simpler way of life, the whole connectedness of how they live in their philosophy, and being exposed to it and living in it and traveling extensively throughout Southeast Asia. I adored it. Oh my gosh. And it was the perfect time for us, being newly married. Um, and being able to really focus in on ourselves, and he's focused in on his career. And I was just so thankful to not work in the financial industry anymore. It's like, yay, thank God. um, but the plan was for me to go back to work once we returned to the States, and I was thankful that I didn't take that test, because it expires after 2 years and I would have to retake it anyway. So very thankful that I didn't take it before I left. But so about before we were scheduled to come back to the States, I got pregnant, and I knew I wanted to have a natural childbirth. And I called the embassy. I said, so who do you know here that would be a female provider that speaks English? They said, no, we don't have anybody that we can recommend, but there is an Australian midwife in Seoul. I said, perfect, midwife. That's right up my alley, because I have not a fear of hospitals, but I, it anxiety. It produced anxiety, hospitals, for some reason. Uh, so she was perfect. So I took a 2-hour train ride into Seoul for my visits with her. And as we were reaching the time when we had to make a decision about the birthing plan, she said, so where are you having the baby at? Are you going to have the baby here, or are you going to have the baby in the States? I said, in the States. She goes, oh, good. So then we don't have to worry about the whole logistics of getting you 2 hours to me if you go into labor. She said, I know one midwife in the whole United States. She's in Seattle. I said, oh, going to Seattle. Perfect. So she gets out a Rolodex, and she goes, okay, so her name's Deborah Connor, and she has her clinic on Finney Avenue. I said, Finney Avenue. My house is on Finney Avenue. So my whole experience with I could talk for days about Harrison's birth story. And there's just so many instances that lined up like that. So my midwife her clinic was on the same street as my house. I was going to have a home birth. Uh, Perfect, because I wanted to have an all natural home birth. We had renters in the house, and so I went home a month early, got the renters out. So friends were getting the house all ready for us to have this baby, but Harrison decided to come about a month early. Paul was still in Korea, and I had to call him up and say, what are you doing right now? Well, the movers are here packing up the rest of our stuff. I'm like, great, because you need to call the translator and get on the next plane. And he made it home because my labor was 36 hours, all natural. And I was still living in a hotel. It was a Residence Inn, so it had kitchen and everything. And they would joke with me as I came in huge, "Oh, you're not having that baby here, are you?" I said, "No, no, I'm not having the baby here." Well, I did. I had the baby. He came early, but it was, yeah, it was exactly the birth that I wanted. It just took a little longer. Um, so with Harrison, he uh he wasn't thriving, and it was probably about 6 weeks after he was born. We were back in our house by then, and I was going to his pediatrician multiple times a week trying to figure out, okay, so what is going on? And I didn't want to panic because the whole child mother bond and the children picking up on anxiety. So I really tried to not be anxious about it and just to know that we'll get this figured out. Um, so we was going to specialist after specialist after specialist, just trying to figure out why he's not thriving. Why is he not gaining weight? He's eating constantly. He's pooping constantly. And I'm eating more fat. I was seeing a naturopath. I was seeing all kinds of different specialists trying to figure it out. And then he developed a skin rash, which was odd. And so his pediatrician, who was a nurse practitioner, she's like, "Huh, let's send you to see a dermatologist." So she sent me to a dermatologist, and I said, "Oh, it's just diaper rash." I said, "It's not diaper rash. It's not." And all these specialists are like, oh, poo-pooing this new anxious mother. Um, and I just knew that this is not normal. I'll just rub these 3 ointments on him, and it's creeping up his torso and down his legs. So it's obviously not diaper rash. So they had me putting this lotion on him 3 times a day, and like we are treating a symptom. This is a symptom. This is his body at this point. It's screaming at us that something is not right. This is not right. Um, and so they said, well, failure to thrive, that is a sign of cystic fibrosis. I'm like, what is that? I didn't know. And I said, and I didn't ask too many questions because I assumed it's not going to, how could it possibly be that? It's not going to be that. So we're going to do a sweat test. So we up at Children's all the time at this point. And so they did a sweat test on him. They put these electrodes on his little teeny tiny little arms and to collect sweat. Well, he was so small, he could not produce any sweat. And that's how they did testing for cystic fibrosis. So they said, well, we're going to have to do a blood test. He'd had so many tests, skin grafts, all kinds of stuff. He's 4 months old at this point. And the doctor called me after the blood test and said, he does have cystic fibrosis. And I went, what is that? What does that even mean? She said, well, and this is over the phone. Well, the good news is that children with cystic fibrosis are living longer these days. I went, whew, wait, what? I did everything right. I'm thinking I've done everything right to keep myself healthy. Uh, she said, well, it's a genetic disease, so it's not something you did or didn't do. I said, okay. She goes, so here's what you need to do. You need to pack a bag. The CF team is waiting for you at the hospital. Pack enough for about a week. I said, you mean I need to go now? She goes, yeah, you need to go now. They're waiting for you. I said, can I call my husband? Yeah, you can call your husband. Just have him meet us there. So again, I could talk for days about Harrison's diagnosis and the whole CF journey, because wow, crazy. But now my motivation to keep myself healthy was no longer about my profession. because I was no longer doing that. It was about being a role model for him, because one of the keys to keep him healthy was to keep himself physically active. And I thought, how ironic that I, who studied music and was a wind player, have a child with disease. I guess I'm the right person. I'm the right mother for him, because I worked for so long to keep my lungs healthy. So I'm gonna be a role model for him on how to keep himself healthy. And um, I'm going to live that life and not just, I'm going to live through actions and not just telling him. He's going to see it. And then I also wanted to keep myself healthy in case I ever needed to be a living donor for him, because they can do that now. You can be a partial lung donor. So that was my motivation to keep myself as healthy as possible. Uh, he's great, by the way. He's 26. And they told us, oh, 25 is a really good expectancy when he was 4 months old. I thought, um, so we knew we wanted more children. So when Harrison was 3, we decided, okay, so I had the birth experience that I wanted. Harrison is fantastic. He's just the happiest little boy ever, because that was important for me too. I never wanted him to feel weird or different or hide who he was. He was going to do his treatments in front of his friends. He was going to, we were just going to live life full and big and out loud. And I did not ever want him to feel insecure about his uh, care plan. Uh, anyways, so we decided to adopt, and we thought, well, we'll adopt a Korean baby because we lived in Korea for 3 years. How perfect would that be? And I actually volunteered while I was there for the Holt House, which was part of the adoption network over there. How ironic is that, too? But the wait for a Korean baby was over 2 years. And well, it doesn't have to be. It can be any child. So they sent us this list we had to fill out about what was acceptable and what was not acceptable in a child. And I just thought, I can't fill out this list. I'm not shopping for a child. And I called them up and I said, is this a requirement? Because I'm not going to fill this out. I refuse to say what's acceptable and unacceptable in a child. And here's cystic fibrosis on the list, and I'm supposed to mark whether that's acceptable or unacceptable. I'm not doing it. I'm just not. So they said, okay, well, most people, when they adopt, they want a healthy baby. They want a brand new healthy baby. I said, no, I will not, won't. So they sent me a booklet full of pictures and descriptions of children from all over the world, ranging from infants to 13 years old. And she said, so these are children that are ready. They're waiting. It could be just their age, or they could have a medical condition that they have. So I'm looking through this book. I'm like, oh gosh, there's a number of kids in here that I could see fitting in well with our family. And but I kept coming back to this one child in particular. And I said to my husband, I said, what do you think? He said, well, I could see a number of children working in this family. I said, yeah, me too. I said, but I keep coming back to this one child in particular. So he picks up this big booklet. It's like over 100 kids. And he flips through it and he goes, is it this one? I said, yes. Yes. How did you know? He goes, I don't know. I don't really know. And so we decided to adopt a 7-year-old boy from China. It was not something we even talked about. We didn't say, let's try and find an older child. You know, we didn't talk about anything like that. We had no expectations. Um, so that took, once we made that decision that we were going to adopt Matthew, um, it took about a year until we finally brought him home. So Harrison is 3 at the time, and we were lucky enough to know what orphanage he was in. He was in one of the showcase orphanages in China. Normally, they don't want you to know because the conditions are not usually ideal. But he happened to be in one that they they didn't mind people knowing about and visiting. So we knew we would get to visit that orphanage too, and meet his caregivers. But he was in that orphanage. He was delivered. We don't really know for sure, but we know he was not a baby because he wasn't an infant, because when he was delivered, they said, okay, well, today's your birthday and you're 1 year old today. It was December 13th. He was found in a marketplace. He'd been abandoned in a marketplace. And we can only make assumptions that his family abandoned him in a place where he would be found and brought to an orphanage because he had a heart defect. He had a ventricle septal defect. I think I said that right. It's been so many years. And we can only assume that they decided we can't provide the care. We can't afford the care. We're going to have to help him in the only way that we know. This is the story that we have told ourselves and we've told him because we didn't want him growing up thinking that his family didn't want him. Uh, So when he was 4, he was in the orphanage from when they said he was 1. He could have been 3 months old. He could have been 15 months old. We don't know. Um, he had his heart fixed. He had heart surgery when he was 4 years old, and Johnson paid for that surgery. Um, so he spent what they said was 1 years old until he was 7 in that orphanage. And they wouldn't allow him to be adopted because they thought he was abandoned. And so they searched for his family or whatever. And then they fudged his paperwork to say he was um, abandoned and not stolen because they thought, well, he was stolen or something because he was a boy. I mean, in China, it was usually girls. That were up for adoption. So it was unusual for a boy to be abandoned. So they thought he was stolen. The police report said he was stolen, but somebody went in and changed that. So then he would be available for adoption. So we bring Matthew home, and Harry is just thrilled and over the moon that he has this big brother now. And they're thick as thieves. They live together now. They're super cute. And but anyways, when we brought him home, we had all this testing done and us, oh, he won't be capable of this, he won't be capable of that. He has this disability, he has that disability. And I said to my husband, I said, we will never tell him that he's not capable of these things. We are not going to mention that. I don't want him growing up thinking that he is not capable of whatever it is he wants to do. We're going to bury that report because it doesn't. No, no. Uh, he's great. But he struggled for years. I could talk about him for days too. Um, I knew I needed to be a role model for him as well. And again, the full health, your physical health, your mental health, your emotional health, all of it would be important for him as well. And he graduated from Washington State University in criminal justice and military science. And he is in the Army Reserves. And because he had his heart defect, he went through the ROTC program at Washington State, not knowing if they were ever going to actually accept him into the military or not. And the perseverance and the discipline and the unwillingness to let somebody else determine what you're capable of says a lot about his character. So he didn't know until the very end that he would be medically approved. But they approved him finally. I'm like, oh my God, do you know anybody else that would put themselves through that and not know? His brother Harrison and I talk about that all the time. Say, oh my God, anybody else would have quit. Nobody else would have gone through that. Um, but he did. He's doing great. He's getting married on Sunday too, by the way. I just found out 3 weeks ago too. Yeah, super cute. Thanks a lot. Uh, so he's great. So again, I wanted to be a role model for both of my boys on how to live a healthy life. And it never had anything to do about skin. So here I am doing a skincare business. So when the boys were older, like when Harrison went off into junior high, I wanted him to take more control of his health. I was going into elementary school. I was up at school pretty much all day, helping him deal with his treatments and food, tube feedings and meds and things like that. But when he went to junior high, I thought he's not going to want his mom coming up to school every day. So talked with the nurse. I said, you need to work with the nurse. You're going to be more responsible for making sure you do your feedings and all of that. And so then I started my senior move management business, and I loved that job. It was so great, and it allowed me the flexibility to be home when I needed to be home, to be in the hospital when I needed to be in the hospital. I got over my phobia and fear of hospitals real quick. So it allowed me that flexibility to be with my family when I needed to be with my family. Uh, and just the privilege of working with families during one of the most stressful periods of their lives, transitions from living in homes that they'd been in for decades into more suitable environments. It's typically a move that most people don't want to make, because yeah, who wants to face that maybe they need some help with certain things. So I adored that job, and it was physically demanding. So again, I'm keeping myself physically in shape. And this is my mid 40s when I was doing that. And I just loved it. And then I guess when Harrison graduated from high school, eh, Matthew had been out of school for 3 years and he didn't know what he wanted to do. And so Harry graduated from high school looking like he knew exactly what he wanted to do. He wanted to be a pediatric nurse because of his experiences at Children's Hospital. So he was going off to Michigan State, go green, following his mom in his mom's footsteps. So Matthew went, oh, I can't have my little brother looking like he knows what he's going to do. So he decided to go off to college too. So they both went off to college at the same time and went, oh boy, how am I going to afford this? Because his dad and I had divorced at that time. I thought, well, I'll figure it out. I always do. I always figure it out. Uh, and so I had an in-state tuition and an out-of-state tuition that I had to manage. So that's when I thought, okay, so I'm going to give up my own business, and I'm going to go work in a community where I can have a more stable income, where I know exactly what I'll be bringing home each month, so I can plan ahead, and I know I'll be able to make those tuition payments. So I started working in the senior living industry inside of it, and I worked in the sales and marketing office for about 5 years, and I loved that too, but it was very stressful for me. I'm an introvert, and an introvert doing an extrovert's job is draining. And I just hit my midlife. And this is where the skin component comes in. This is where it finally made that connection. Watching seniors struggle with their own skin and the deterioration of the skin barrier, and how quickly and easily you can bruise, and that bruise can turn into a wound and can tear, and then what happens? Then you're dealing with wound care and infection and sepsis and all kinds of crazy scary things. So I thought, oh, I make bone broth, and I'm gonna take this fat from the bone broth, and I'm gonna render it into tallow, and I'm gonna start making my own tallow so I can help keep my skin barrier healthy. So this is when it kind of started for me, um, the tie-in with the skin health. Before, I neglected my skin, because that's the last thing you think of. It's your largest organ, and it's the one you look at every day. So how could you possibly ignore it? But I did. Um, and then it was when I started going through my menopause transition. And so it was like a perfect storm. Uh, Menopause, stressful job, hormone craziness. I had Hashimoto's disease, which is a thyroid disease. Perfect storm, stressful job. And I made a change. I went to a different community with a bigger responsibility, bigger role. I became the director of community relations for a community closer to my home up at Smoky Point, and it was the most stressful thing. It was so dysfunctional. It was oh, so stressful. And then my significant other, had been with him for 10 years. I thought he was my ride or die guy. He, it's a tale as old as time. He decided, well, he left me abruptly. It was something that it caught me totally off guard, devastated me, destroyed me. So I'm dealing with Hashimoto's. I'm dealing with a extremely stressful job, dealing with that devastation, dealing with my own health issues. For the first time in my life, I was dealing with my own health issues, and I didn't feel right. I didn't feel good. I couldn't figure it out. The doctors were like wanting to put me on antidepressants. Like, I'm not depressed. I'm not depressed. They had no answers for me. And so I decided I'm going to quit my job, because I can't, in good faith, do this job. I can't sell a community that I don't believe in. I can't, my integrity is the most important thing that I have. And if I'm going to hold myself personally to a certain level, I have to hold myself professionally to that same level. And I cannot do that at this job. And then dealing with my personal stuff on top of it, I just went, I'm going to quit. I gave them no notice. I just, because it was so bad, I turned in my work phone, I turned in everything, and I left them a note. Uh, I've never done that before in my life, but I just felt like my health depended on it. My whole health depended on it. And I took that time to get my health back in line. And it was when I removed myself from the stress. I really dialed in on my nutrition. I really dialed in on my exercise, but it was really more the stress, and getting that stress level. That's when I started to realize that, oh, this really is all connected. And you can't be healthy physically, but your work life is out of balance, your stress is out of balance, your hormones are out of balance, and then that the whole endocrine system piece clicked in for me too, because I'm dealing with Hashimoto's, and how do I manage all of this? That's when I learned, oh, the toxins that I'm putting on my body, it's a doorway into my internal system. So yeah, these are endocrine disruptors. So I started learning more and more about that, and and the things I wash my hair with, the candles that you burn, the laundry detergent that you use, the cookware that you use. It's endless when you start thinking about all the in our environment that not only are we putting on our body, that we're breathing in, that we are wearing, that we are ingesting, that we're yeah. So I thought, I can't stop at tallow. I have to create a whole I have to create a whole skincare line. So that was really kind of where that was born. It was through my own journey of wanting to get my, because I didn't want to feel like that anymore. I wasn't myself. I didn't. And once I removed the stress and removed those toxins from the external exposure as well, then my health really turned around, and I can say I feel better. I feel better than ever. I just never thought it would be possible to feel this good ever again. So that was the missing piece. That was the final piece of the puzzle of putting it all together. And so here I am today. 1 year anniversary really of when I launched the business. It was August last year. So that's my story.
Wow. What a beautiful journey. Thank you for walking us through it. And you just, Kathy, you just really did a great job of just sharing with us those heartfelt, important milestones for your family and decisions, because our journey is not a straight road, right? It has a lot of little forks in the road and twists and turns, and oh my goodness, what a beautiful life, what a beautiful journey. And I'm so grateful
Yeah.
to learn more about you through your sharing and your family and the things that matter so much to you, like your integrity and your family, and being willing to accept a child and not have limitations and labels.
Yeah. I never wanted that for myself, growing up with other people's expectations of what I was capable of. I didn't want that for my own children, It
Wow.
just I don't want anyone limiting what they believe they can accomplish.
Yes, that's so inspiring. So before we open up for questions, and we don't have to do this, we could weave in and out of questions too, but I just want to make sure that we hit on some of the, like now that you've shared your journey, let's kind of have you pull out of there, really what's the heart behind what you do. Now, I know you've said it several times, but just to be able to have that clarity from your sharing.
I think I've always wanted to live my life with integrity. And I wanted to not say it, but show it. I wanted to be it. I wanted to embody it. And and I'm an all or nothing kind of person in a way that if once I make that decision, absolutely everything I can to be as good as I can at it, no matter what that is, with my musical pursuits, with my being a mother. I was a stay-at-home mom, and I wanted to be the best possible mother I could be for them.
Mhm.
I'm putting myself all in. I'm all in. Moderation is just not a word in my vocabulary. I don't do moderation really in anything. So yeah, it's just being true to myself. My integrity is the most important thing that I have.
And
Yeah.
that really shows up in everything you do so beautifully. Okay, so what would you say is your secret sauce that has made you successful? So you're kind of talking about it, not moderation, integrity, but if you had to make a recipe for that,
I'm just
would
happy.
you?
I'm a happy person. I'm positive. I've always been that way, and when everyone has things in their life that's a challenge that you can struggle with and you can choose to be a victim for. And I again I wanted to be this role model for my kids because of all the and they certainly have lots of reasons to feel um a victim or to not be happy in their lives. But life is beautiful. I just have always felt that way, and that there's always been these things in my life that have lined up perfectly. There's just when I moved out to San Francisco and my mom said, "Oh, you always attract the right people. I'm not worried about you at all because you just always have the support of you just always find your people." And look at me here. I mean, again, I have just the best people around me. Yeah, I'm just happy. Life is
Mhm.
lovely. Life is fun.
Mhm.
Yeah, life is to enjoy.
Kathy, hearing your story and then hearing your answer just now, it's so, it's like your journey is at the seeds that were planted in your life at a young age, even though there was,
Yes.
hardship with losing your dad. But hearing about your brothers, your siblings taking care of
Yeah.
you, you always felt loved. I mean, that
Yes.
just comes out in you in every pore of your body. I just feel the sincerity of that. Okay, let's move to what daily habits or rhythms help you stay aligned and successful.
I start my mornings really quiet. I meditate and I set my daily intentions. So I know what it is I want to work on today, what I want to focus on today. I get outside every day. I try and do some kind of movement every day to keep my body moving. It's important that I want to be able to move in a way like I did when I was a child. So I work a lot on that. I read every day. Most of my days are pretty quiet. I'm out here all by myself, and I kind of like that. Kind of like that. So really, my days are structured. I do well when there's a framework to it, and I start that by my daily intentions in the morning. I think that's probably the most important thing I do every day. Otherwise, I can distract myself with all kinds of things.
That's beautiful. Okay, what would you say is the pivotal lesson that has shaped your journey? If you can distill it to one or a few pivotal lessons.
That's hard. That's hard.
If there is one that comes to mind.
I just come back to my family, uh, and that love and support of my family. Create that feeling that I had growing up for my own children, because I know that's why I am who I am today. Um, the love of my family, the love of my neighbors, the love of the whole community really had a huge impact. And I
Hmm.
think it really is w- why I am the way I am.
Hmm.
I just have had such a blessed life.
Mhm.
Um, and
And
I
that's
want
your
to
choice
pay that
too.
forward.
That's your choice, right?
To see it that way, yes.
Other
Yeah.
people could go through the same life and see it differently. So just want to commend you for your choosing positivity and happiness. And, that slant on life has made all the difference for you. And I just see that.
Well,
It's so
and
beautiful.
I feel like it's because I've always had, I mean, when my dad died, my family was just so lovely about it. And when Harrison was diagnosed, Harrison is the most joyful person. And a very devastating diagnosis actually beautiful.
Mm,
His whole, I mean, yeah, he is. I could talk for days about him and Matthew with his
mm,
perseverance. And I just,
so sweet.
yeah,
So sweet. Okay, well, I'm gonna go ahead and open the lines because I know we're going long here, but I think it's just a wonderful opportunity for us to have a conversation and just thank you. I want to thank you
thank you.
for your looking at the world through your eyes is a beautiful thing, Kathy. You
The
are
world
just
is
such a
beautiful.
positive person and go-getter um and you do attract good things into your life with that attitude. It doesn't mean life always goes, perfectly.
Mhm.
There's heartache in the midst of it, but being able
Mhm.
to have a positive attitude in the midst of it is really important. So feel free to unmute yourself if you want to share any comments or ask any questions or be able to share how Kathy's transparency and sharing has landed for you.
Well, I'll start. I was really excited to hear your story, Kathy, because after Lori spoke, you said you had a similar story, and I was really anxious to hear it. And what really stuck out to me was you grew up thinking you could do anything, and then that's how you raised your kids. And I don't know if you understand how rare that is because people have limitations. They grow up thinking they can't do things or they can't be things. And you just like, you grow up that way and then you pass that on, which they will pass on. And that just really stood out. And I love that.
Thank you. Thank you. I wish it weren't so rare.
Yes. And because you have exemplified that, it's going to be less rare because it's a ripple effect. It's contagious for all of us to be able to have that, positive mindset and can-do spirit. It's really sweet.
Yeah.
Anybody
Well,
else? Marcel.
and I love that, Kathy, and I think I heard it more clearly today than I've ever heard it. But you are not just selling skincare, you are a steward of skincare. Like you really are like, don't get sick, try this. And that to me is so much more than just business. It's about wellness and at a bigger level. And I think I heard it differently today. Like I know we've been talking about it's a wellness company, not just a skincare company or a beauty company. But you really are like you've been in the trenches. You've seen kind of the nasty and the gnarly and the difficult stuff. And you're like, hey guys, we can fix this. And you're really like a steward of the information almost. Does that resonate? I don't know. I feel like I adore that about you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
And it's never too early to start and it's never too late either.
Marcel, I think you made a really excellent point, and I pray, Kathy, that you can find a way to be able to communicate without having to tell your whole story because it takes a little bit. But to I think what Marcel just said is really, really brilliant because when you have a company and you have products, the natural thing is to sell them, right? But you have a solution. It's not just a product, you have a solution to challenges that we all experience because we all have skin. And so I really love that. I'm going to be thinking about that and praying that for you too, is, you know, you are stewarding wellness and you've done so all your life, and that's brought you to this solution.
Yes. Yeah. I just wish I had glued in earlier about the connection of all of it.
It's perfect. You're where you're supposed to be. You discovered it when you're supposed to be, and that's the thing that's my epiphany lately is if I was supposed to know earlier, I would have, but I
True.
didn't, you know,
True.
for whatever reason. You didn't see it. You didn't have the bandwidth. You didn't have the time. You didn't have the awareness at the time. You didn't have
Well,
the
and
ability.
I always thought that if your skin, I was never a girly girl, and it was just never on my radar. I don't know how to do makeup. I don't know how to do my hair. I was so thankful when I had boys because it was just not something that I spent any time thinking about at all. Because that is,
Mm.
yeah, I don't know.
So if anybody else has any questions, feel free to unmute yourself and we'll transition to you. But I want to make sure that we have an opportunity in this conversation, in your sharing the heart behind the daily hustle of champions, to tell a little bit more about your business. So just spend a few minutes telling your business name, your website, how they can get a hold of you, and then just share about the products that you create.
Sure. So it's Bluffside Apothecary, and my website is bluffsideapothecary.com. You can find me on social media on Instagram and Facebook at the moment. And my products are all natural, organic, botanical based, carefully sourced. I'm careful about where I get my oils and botanicals from. The tallow is grass fed from local cows that I render myself here in the house. It's kind of stinky, actually. I actually do it out in the garage because it is kind of smelly. It's a smelly process. So I do emollient tallows and I do cleansers and toners and serums and the emollient tallows. And it's really intended for your whole body. It's not just your face, but you put it everywhere. My philosophy is, do you have skin there? It goes there then. You can use it there. Um, yeah, so different formulas for different, whatever it is you want to target. But really, you can use any of them. They're appropriate for any kind of skin type. But if you really want to strengthen your, yeah, there's a whole, uh,
It's amazing how, meeting you a year ago and then in the last year, and then now going to Costco and seeing beef tallow. It's
yeah.
just like it really, you are ahead of the curve because
Well,
people are really resonating with that.
it is becoming a thing, and I want people to also understand this is not a fad for me. This is not me jumping on some bandwagon. This is not me going, "Oh, I got an idea to make some money," because
Right.
it was never about that.
No, I'm so glad you mentioned that because you're right. It's not about that for you. It's about the
Yeah,
journey. It's about a product. It's about, using things that are different than traditional, gosh, all the parabens and all of the, you know, different things that
fragrance.
are in traditional shampoo and conditioner and lotion
Yes.
and that have,
And you don't even realize it until you start like the word fragrance. You want to avoid that because
right.
that could mean any number of things.
Right. Because our skin is our biggest organ. And you say that a lot, but I think it needs to be said more.
Yeah.
Our skin
Yeah,
is
and
our
it's
largest
continuous. It
organ.
doesn't stop here.
No,
It's
no, anything you
continuous.
put on your hair and your
Yeah.
makeup and your lotion,
Yes.
it all affects our health. And so, oh, what a rich, beautiful sharing. Thank you for being so vulnerable, so
Thank you.
transparent. I'm just gonna back bounce it back to you to just what encouragement would you offer others as we close?
I think I would say the only limitations are here. You know,
Mm,
you are the one that places the limitations on yourself. And um, I just think potential is limitless. And when you understand that, it just opens up so many possibilities and so many doorways. And it's easy to find ways to limit yourself, whether it's fear or, I mean, and I struggle. My word of the year is courage. Because with courage, if you do something courageous, then you build your confidence. Your confidence grows when you do something courageous. So I try and do something courageous every day. You know, what is
mm,
something that puts me out of my comfort zone? What is it? Yeah, I just because again, I want to be a role model for my boys. The boys are at an age where, you know, Harrison is struggling to figure out what he wants to do next in life. He feels stuck. He feels stagnant, and you know, I can talk at him, but it is really through he needs to see other people doing it, and
yes, what a
yeah,
beautiful role model you are in the entrepreneurial sector to be able to create a new product and head in a whole different direction and but coming full circle with your
yes,
journey with
yeah,
health. So
yeah,
I want to encourage anyone who is interested in products that are made rendered with tallow and with love and with care and with holistic ingredients. Check out bluffsideapothecary.com. Contact information is going to be included in the description. And also, thank you, Marcel, for putting in the chat box to stay tuned for Bluffside Adventures community online. So, sounds like you've got some fun things in the works. So, I just want to encourage everyone to make every connection an exceptional connection. And thank you so much for your sharing, Kathy. It's so
thank
rich.
you,
What a beautiful conversation.
thank you.
Thank you. Bye bye.